My name is Marcus. I'm 38. I live in Austin, Texas, and I spend my days staring at the digital pulse of the world. My LinkedIn says I'm a senior growth architect, which is just a fancy way of saying I spend millions of dollars on Google and Meta ads, obsessing over conversion rates, lifetime value, LTV, and the subtle signals that tell you when a customer is about to walk away. I live in a world of data, where everything has a price and every investment is expected to yield a return. But for 3 years, I ignored the most obvious bad lead in my life, my own family. It all came to a head on a Thursday in late November, the kind of crisp, blue-sky Texas day that usually feels like a gift. We were at my sister Elena's house in the suburbs, a sprawling 5-bedroom limestone fortress with a manicured lawn and a 3-car garage. My son, Jax, who is 10 and thinks the world is made of Lego bricks and space nebula documentaries, was sitting next to me. Jax is a quiet kid. He's got my dark hair and his mother's observant, cautious eyes. My ex-wife moved to Seattle 3 years ago to follow a career path I couldn't ask her to ignore. So it's mostly just the two of us in our modern townhouse in East Austin. It's a good life. We have our routines. Saturday morning sliders. He likes them with apricot jam, don't ask. Sunday hikes and a mutual respect for each other's deep work hours. Elena is 3 years older than me, married to a guy named Bradley, who consults in high-end landscaping, which is code for works 3 months a year and talks about golf the other 9. They have 3 kids, all blonde, all loud, all treated like the central protagonists of the universe by my parents. We were sitting at the long oak table, the smell of rosemary-rubbed turkey and brown sugar yams filling the air. My mother was fussing over the centerpieces, and my father was already 3 scotches deep, laughing at one of Bradley's stale jokes. Jax reached out with his plate. He hadn't had much all day, saving room for the big meal. He was looking at the platter of sliced turkey breast sitting right in front of Elena. "Aunt Elena," he said softly, "could I have some turkey, please?" Elena didn't even look at him. She didn't offer the tongs. Instead, she stood up, grabbed the heavy ceramic platter, and moved it to the other side of the table, closer to her eldest son, Cooper. Now, Jax," she said, her voice dripping with that saccharine artificial sweetness she uses when she's about to be mean. "Let's be fair. This turkey is for the real family, the ones who are here through thick and thin." The table went silent. Not the kind of silence that means people didn't hear, but the heavy, pressurized silence of people who heard exactly what was said and are waiting to see if they can get away with ignoring it. "Elena," I said, my voice low. "What does that mean?" She let out a sharp, brittle laugh, nudging Cooper to take a double serving. "Oh, Marcus, don't be so sensitive. It's just a little joke. You know how it is. Jack spent half the week with his other family in Seattle, right? He's practically a guest. Guests get the side dishes first." One of my cousins, a guy named Rick, who's always looking for Elena's approval, snorted into his wine. My mother suddenly found the pattern on her napkin very interesting. My father didn't stop chewing. Jax froze. His hand was still hovering over the table, fingers curled around the rim of an empty white plate. His face didn't crumple. That would have been easier to handle. Instead, it went completely blank. He looked down at the table, his ears turning a bright, humiliated red. He slowly pulled his hand back, staring at the lone scoop of lumpy mashed potatoes on his plate like it was an indictment. I felt it then, that cold, calculated clarity that hits me when a marketing campaign is failing and I finally see the reason why. It wasn't just the turkey, it was the rose, the return on ad spend. I had been pouring capital into this family for years, and my son was the one paying the interest. "Jax," I said. My voice was eerily calm. "Get your coat." He looked up, surprised. "Dad? We're leaving," I said. "Oh, for heaven's sake, Marcus," my mother chirped, finally intervening but targeting the wrong person. "Don't make a scene. It's Thanksgiving." "I'm not making a scene, Mom," I said, standing up. "I'm making a decision." I reached for Jax's hand. His palm was cold. I didn't look at Elena. I didn't look at Bradley. I walked my son out of that limestone fortress, past the foyer filled with photos of the grandkids, where Jax was always the one in the back, slightly out of focus. As we stepped onto the porch, the laughter started up again inside. It was muffled by the heavy front door, but I heard it. Elena's sharp, victorious cackle. We drove back to our townhouse in total silence. I stopped at a 24-hour diner on the way. I ordered him the biggest plate of steak and eggs they had, and I watched him eat. He didn't ask why we left. He knew. 10-year-olds are better at reading data than we give them credit for. "Dad?" he asked, his mouth full of hash browns. "Yeah, buddy?" "Does Aunt Elena hate me?" I leaned across the table. "No, Jax. She doesn't hate you. She just doesn't value you. And in this life, we don't stay where we aren't valued." That night, after I tucked him in, I didn't go to sleep. I went to my office. I opened my personal finance dashboard. I'm a performance marketer. I track everything. Every subscription, every coffee, every charitable donation. And there it was, sitting in my fixed monthly outflows column. Mortgage support. Elena and Bradley. What had each had 3 years ago, Bradley's consulting had hit a wall. They were 2 months behind on their mortgage and facing foreclosure. Elena had called me, sobbing, talking about the kids losing their school district, about the trauma of moving. I was the successful little brother. I was the one with the easy laptop job. I had stepped up. I'd set up an autopay from my business account directly to their lender. It was supposed to be a 6-month bridge. 6 months turned into 36. I had paid over $66,000 to keep them in that house. I had funded the kitchen where my son was just insulted. I had paid for the table he was just told he didn't belong at. I looked at the next payment date, December 1st. I clicked Cancel Recurring Payment. The confirmation box appeared. "Are you sure? This action cannot be undone." "I've never been surer of anything in my life," I whispered. Click. Then I opened a new tab. I searched for luxury resorts, Maui. I spent the next 3 hours doing what I do for my clients, optimizing. I found a suite at a resort in Wailea that looked like it had been designed by a god of relaxation. I booked 2 first-class tickets. I booked a private whale-watching charter. I booked a guided submarine tour because Jax is obsessed with the midnight zone of the ocean. The total for the trip, with all the bells and whistles, came to $25,400. Roughly 14 months of Elena's mortgage. I didn't tell a soul. I went back to work. I took Jax to school. I prepped my Q4 reports. I moved my family's group chat to archived so I wouldn't see the notifications. We flew out the following Friday. The look on Jax's face when the flight attendant in first class asked him if he wanted a warm cookie and a glass of sparkling cider was worth every cent. He spent the 5-hour flight playing games on the massive screen and leaning back in his pod, grinning at me like he'd discovered a secret portal to another dimension. "Is this real, Dad?" he asked. "As real as it gets, Jax." Maui was a fever dream of blue and gold. We spent 7 days in a world where the only inner circle was the 2 of us. We swam with sea turtles that looked like ancient floating stones. We ate dinner on the beach, watching the sun sink into the Pacific like a burning coin. I took photos, not out of vanity, but because for the first time in years, Jax was the center of every frame. He wasn't in the back. He wasn't out of focus. He was the protagonist. On the last day, sitting on the balcony of our suite, I posted a carousel of photos to my Instagram and Facebook. Caption, "Decided to invest in some real family time this year. Thankful for the moments that actually matter." Maui, Dirasher family, first. First class, all the way. I knew the algorithm would do its work. I knew my mother followed me. I knew Elena's husband, Bradley, spent his consulting hours scrolling through feeds. The first call came 20 minutes later. I ignored it. Then the texts started. Elena, "Marcus, what is this? How can you afford a trip like that?" Bradley just got a notification from the bank. The mortgage payment didn't clear. "There must be a mistake with your autopay." I let it sit for an hour. I wanted her to feel the silence. I wanted her to feel the weight of the side dish status. Finally, I called her back. "Hello, Elena," I said. I was sitting in a lounge chair, watching Jax jump into the infinity pool. "Marcus, thank God. Look, there's some glitch with your bank. The mortgage is overdue, and they're charging a late fee. You need to call them and fix it right now. We were counting on that money for the kids' Christmas gifts, too." "It's not a glitch, Elena," I said. The silence on the other end was instantaneous. "What do you mean?" I canceled it, permanently. You what? Marcus, you can't do that. We have a budget. We have a life here. You've been paying it for years." "I've been paying for a seat at a table that my son isn't welcome at," I said, my voice steady. "I've spent $66,000 keeping your kids in their school district while you told mine he isn't real family. I ran the numbers, Elena. The conversion rate on my relationship with you is 0. In fact, it's negative. I'm just reallocating the budget to a higher performing asset." "Oh, what? What the hell are you talking about? You're talking like a robot. We're going to lose the house. My kids will have nowhere to go." "Then I guess Bradley should start consulting a bit harder," I said. "Or you could get a job. Most real family members do that when they need to pay their bills." "You're a monster," she spat. "You're doing this because of a turkey? Over a joke?" "I'm doing this because I saw my son's face when you moved that platter. I'm doing this because for 10 years I've watched you crop him out of your life while I paid for yours. The turkey was just the final signal I needed to stop the campaign." I hung up. My mother called next. She was crying. "Sammy, please. This is so extreme. Elena is hysterical. She's saying they're going to have to sell the SUV. You can't let your sister go through this." "Mom," I said, "did you say anything when she told Jax he wasn't family?" Well, I didn't want to cause a scene." "Exactly. And I don't want to cause a scene now. I'm just busy. Jax and I are about to go to a luau. I'll talk to you after the holidays. Maybe." The fallout was intense. For 2 weeks, I was the villain of the extended family. There were emails about filial duty and Christian charity. My father sent me a text saying he was disappointed in the man I'd become. I replied with a photo of the $150 monthly payment receipt and a photo of Jax's board game from 2 years ago, the one from the clearance rack while the other kids got Switches. "I'm disappointed in the grandfather you've been," I wrote back. He never replied. Elena didn't lose the house. It turns out, when the free money tap gets turned off, people find ways to survive. Bradley took a job as a project manager for a construction firm. Elena started working part-time at a high-end boutique. They sold the SUV and got a used minivan. They stayed in the house, but they had to actually pay for it. We weren't invited to the big family Christmas. Instead, I took Jax to New York City. We stayed at the Plaza. We saw the tree at Rockefeller Center. We went to a jazz club where the lead saxophonist let Jax hold his instrument after the set. We were sitting in a small Italian restaurant in Greenwich Village on Christmas Eve. The place was packed, loud, and smelled like garlic and expensive red wine. Jax looked at the menu and then looked at me. "Dad?" "Yeah, buddy?" "Is it weird that I like this better? Just us." "It's not weird at all," I said. "I used to feel like I was always waiting for someone to notice me at Aunt Elena's," he said, poking at his lasagna. "Like I had to be really quiet so I wouldn't get in the way. Here I feel like, I don't know, like I'm actually here." I reached across the table and ruffled his hair. "You are actually here, Jax, and you're the most important person in the room." The following year, for Thanksgiving, I did something different. I didn't go to Maui. I didn't go to New York. I hosted. I invited my cousin Jenna, the one who had sent me a secret text after the Maui trip saying she was proud of me, and her 3 kids. I invited my neighbor, a widower named Mr. Henderson who had no family left. I invited my assistant from work and her fiancé. We had a 20-pound turkey. I carved it myself. I walked over to Jax, who was sitting at the head of the table laughing at one of Mr. Henderson's stories about the Korean War. I placed the biggest, juiciest slice of white meat right on his plate. "To the heart of the family," I said. He looked up at me, his eyes bright and certain. "Thanks, Dad." I looked around the table. There were 2 empty chairs at the far end. I'd left them there on purpose. They weren't for Elena or my parents. They were just empty. A reminder that a table is only as good as the people who are willing to sit at it with love. My phone buzzed in my pocket. A text from my mother. "We're having dinner now. It's very quiet. We miss you, Sammy. Love you." I looked at the message. I looked at my son, who was currently explaining the event horizon of a black hole to my neighbor. I looked at the friends who actually wanted to be there. I didn't reply. I put the phone face down on the sideboard and picked up my fork. The data was in. The campaign was a success, and for the first time in my life, the investment was finally paying off.